come and take a seat while I bring the heat. I'm your host with the most. My name is Dizzy, and I'm definitely going to keep you busy. Grand rising, grand afternoon, grand evening, wherever you are on the planet, whatever time it is when you're hearing or seeing this. I am your host with the most, Dizzy. And yes, you know what? It's another episode of Sit Down Sundays. It's 5:55 in the UK when this is being broadcast. So wherever you are in the world, peace and love and gratitude. And we're bringing some heat to the seat this week with somebody I met probably over 10, 12 years ago. And then it was within a conversation with a good friend of mine. She said this gentleman's name, but she didn't say his last name because I would never have forgotten. Because the day I met him, it was I think it was a Yes Club meeting in the north, in Leeds somewhere where it was. But I knew it was inspiring, and we connected. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to my good friend, Alister Lobo. After so many years, my friend, what a pleasure. I know since we connected the other day, it's just been excitement after excitement after excitement. So welcome to the show, Alister.
Right, thank you for that intro, Dizzy. And I love the intro music, by the way. It's very, very cool indeed. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to having a chat with you. And
wonderful. So look, we this journey of Sit Down Sundays is similar to where we kind of left off many, many years ago, because you were showing me stuff. We were talking about DeMartini and the endless possibilities of this world of personal development. And I can see by the plethora of books behind you, you know, this is what we were talking about. You know, I got excited, and that hasn't changed, because since we spoke last, the world has been through some interesting times. And it's always great to connect with people, because you understand where they are, because the circumstances that people think they're in right now could easily create anxiety, stress, and lots of stuff. But this show is about transformation and understanding that just because there's anxiety and stress out there does not mean it has to be inside you itself. And that's the purpose of this show. And if you're watching this for the first time, listen, sitting down here and listening to a conversation could transform your life. But before we go any further, I want to share this song, because this whole organization is called World Transformation, and they created a song, and it got we actually experienced World Transformation Day inside of COVID. And it was interesting because as much as everyone was going out ringing their bells on a Thursday, whatever, you know, that thing that happened over the last 18 months, within that, World Transformation Day turned up, and it was an excuse to look at the positive things in life. So I want to share this song, Alister, because I know I play it every episode, and it really does move the audience. So I want to share it with you as a gift from this organization.
This is a message for everyone who is listening. Hearts and minds connecting, building a world community. This is the moment the people are coming together. Spirit of transformation, reunite in the meaning of we. What is the biggest thing that you can dream of? What can you do to make it true? World Transformation Day, let's make a difference. for me and me for you. This is the moment, the signal, the klaxon, the ringing, the alarm to awaken, to ignite the passion within, ready for changes. The spirit is stirred and shaken. Now we are primed to awaken. New chapters for us to begin. What is the biggest thing that you can dream of? What can you do to make it true? Well, transformation day, let's make a difference. You for me and me for you. What is the biggest thing that you can dream of? What can you do to make it true? Well, transformation day, let's make a difference. You for me and me for you. We can dream bigger. We open our eyes 'cause we forgot that we could see. We can dream better. We sing it aloud to be the best that we can be. Can be. Can be. What is the biggest thing that you can dream of? What can you do to make it true? Well, transformation day, let's make a difference. You for me and me for you. Transformation. What is the biggest thing that you can dream of? What can you do to make it true? Well, transformation day, let's make a difference. You for me and me for you.
Wow. You know what?
Fantastic. Wow. What a production.
Yes. So I had to play that to you because I know, since our conversation, this is what you're about. You are about transformation. That's what the work you do from what I know of you and what I know of you now. Every conversation is about that because that's what you do.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
tell the audience, because
Yeah, I mean, you look, from a very early age, I had when I was 6 years old, I had an enlightening moment. Some people call it a satori, and it was kind of bizarre how it happened. It was it took me a long time to make sense of it, but I was playing football. I had some friends come around to my house, and we wanted to play football in the garden, and there was no football available. We didn't have an actual ball, but what we had was a giant space hopper, these big orange things with handles on the end. And so we started playing. There were 6 of us, and we had 3 aside, and we were playing, and it was just hilarious because we were falling out. It was just so comical, particularly when you're only 6. I think we were 5, 6, and 7 years of age, the 6 of us, and we were just falling over the ball and tumbling around, and there was 6 of us kicking it at once, and it wasn't going anywhere, and then and we just, it was pure innocent laughter. No one was making fun of anyone else. It was just laughter at the hilarity of the situation. And we've got to a point where I remember there's this moment I remember where I went to take a throw the ball in because it got in the flower bed, and I went, and as I threw it, I fell backwards and everyone was laughing. And as I landed in the flower bed, I left my body. I actually left my body, and I can't fully explain where I was, but I was connected to something beyond the physical world. And one memory I have of it, which I can articulate in words, was like, if you've ever seen the pattern of the flower of life, it was an infinite flower of life, just going on and on and on and on. And I just felt that I was part of it. I was one of the many souls that was in this matrix of it was brilliant white light with a dark background, and it was just clear. And I remember as I came out of it, and I have no idea how long I was off. It was timeless. But I remember coming round, and my friends were still playing and laughing. And then one of the girls came up to me and said, "Oh, are you okay?" And I just remember smiling and saying, yeah, I'm fine. And I remember thinking to myself, this is the most significant thing that will ever happen to me in my entire life. And I knew with certainty. I knew with absolute certainty. And it's interesting because the thing that puzzled me was I wasn't sure about what my purpose was in life. And that was so it was enlightening, but it also gave me a pain. It gave me a challenge that I was confused. Well, yeah, I can see this incredible matrix, this field of potential that from which the physical has manifested, but I'm not sure what my role is within it. And that was one point of confusion. And the other point of confusion as I grew up was, spirituality is supposed to be really serious, and you're supposed to kind of meditate on the bottom of a mountain and put yourself through some kind of ordeal to get enlightenment. And all I did was laugh. Yeah. And I'm thinking this, so I was kind of, those are my 2 points of confusion. And I went on my own journey, and it involved, I had some issues with gambling when I was, in my teens and early 20s. And I had some, I went on, I had a really interesting family dynamic, as a lot of us do. And yeah, I definitely had some massive challenges as I grew up. I experienced, I went to a school where I was the only non-white child, and I used to get bullied for the color of my skin and all kinds of interesting things like that. But it was a wonderful journey. It's an amazing journey. And the thing is, as I grew up, the 2 things that really I loved was this curiosity about spirituality and also business. So my dad was an entrepreneur, and they were both, I loved them equally. I loved spiritual journeys and understanding spirituality, and I loved helping people. I loved working in business, and a big shift in my life was when, because people said, well, you can't do both, they're separate things. And when the penny really dropped for me, I understood that, you can do both. And in fact, business doesn't, for many people, is not a spiritual experience, but it can be. And if you look at all the other areas of life, family life, social life, health life, even financial life, they can be spiritual experiences. They're not necessarily for a lot of people. And so just because they're not necessarily, why can't they be? And, I've worked in so many different fields with different people. I worked with a guy called John Robson, who was a 5 times British Kung Fu champion. And I worked with him through his whole 7-year career. And, John went to 2 world championships, and I was his mindset coach throughout that whole period. And it was a spiritual experience. And we weren't, John was not attached to winning, which was the key to his secret, because he had no fear of losing. And I kind of take that into a lot of the business areas that I work with. One of the things I find in business is that the subconscious primary focus is to make money. when I work with businesses, that's not the primary focus. It's an automatic secondary output, is that we generate money. But the primary focus is a spiritual purpose. And there are plenty of businesses that don't have that and that are very successful, and that's fine. But I tend to attract and work with entrepreneurs that want to build a business which has spirituality at its core. And, you know, the profits just come. I mean, I've worked with, what is it? 9 out of 10 businesses fail within 5 years. I've worked with about 40 startups, and most of them are still going many years later, the vast majority of them. And they're spiritually centered businesses. And so what I've found is the rules that apply to businesses that are purely focused on profit are very different to businesses that are focused on spirit. Now, the thing is, a lot of people think a spiritual business should be a charity or something like that. And I do work with some charities as well, but it's not necessarily the case, because for me, the financial side of it is about fair exchange. It's just it's a kind of, it's like the bricks of a building. So a builder would never be attached to the bricks in his building. He just sees them as one of the things for which you build a building. So he wants to, if he's a spiritual builder, he wants to build a building in a certain way, and for it to represent something. Maybe it will have a spiritual use or whatever. But he's not attached to the bricks. Like, he's not staying up all night worrying about his bricks. And so for me, you know, money is just the building bricks of a business. But most people aren't awake to that. They think that the money is the end goal. Okay. And I've worked with a number of businesses that make, you know, huge amounts of money, but the people who run those businesses are not attached to the money. Well, you know, there's always an element of attachment. And so a lot of the work I do, I end up, so I've studied business systems, processes, and all these things that help people to build a business. But alongside it, I've done all the spiritual work, because for me, what's the point? What's the point in any area of my life? If I have a social life, I want to embody my spirituality within that. If I have a family life, I want to embody my spiritual part of myself within that. So for me, spirituality is not a separate area of life. It's a component of all the other areas. So it's a different way of seeing things. And when you bring spirituality into, you think about every area of life, even if you're doing your exercise, your daily exercise, or you're eating your food, being mindful, being present, and being in a state of grace for your food, you know, you can bring spirituality into every area of life. So certainly, if you can do it in business, you can do it anywhere. That's what I found out. So I do a lot of spiritual work with people. Most of my clients that I've been working with for the last 17 years are entrepreneurs. But I've ended up working with people who don't identify themselves as entrepreneurs as well. And, you know, for me, getting, understanding your core values, your authentic core values, understanding the authentic being is at the heart of all my work. And also understanding and having a relationship with your own ego. So, you know, working with the ego and working with other people's egos is a huge part of my work. And what I've found is, you know, linking it to your what your organization is doing, and the mention of, you know, the whole COVID thing. I found in the last 18 months, throughout COVID, 18 months plus, I've grown spiritually more than I have in any other period in my life, because I have obviously had my own challenges with the whole thing, and so have all my clients, and helping them through that. And what a lot of people do is they can get sucked into their ego very easily. So the way you know you're in your ego is you have fear, anger, sadness, shame, guilt, all these things, or infatuation. That can be part of it. Fantasies and infatuations. These are all egoic symptoms, if you like. But what are the causes of ego? The causes are, there's three things that cause ego: judgment, attachment, and resistance. So when we're judging other people or ourselves, when we're attached to the world being a certain way, or us doing things a certain way, or attached to our own values, or we're resisting something. We're resisting something which is the point of where transformation happens, is when you let go of the resistance, you surrender to the resistance. So these are the three forces that are the cause of the symptoms. So when I have a client, or I look at myself and I'm anxious in any way, it means I'm in my ego. Because like when you transcend your ego, you can't be fearful, you can't be angry. Okay, you can't. So the only way you transcend your ego is if you have no attachment. If you're the less attached you are, the less you're judging. So what's happened through COVID? So I found there are these kind of three egoic groups of people that have surfaced. One is the what a lot of people call the elites, the government, the whatever, the World Economic Forum. I hear so many different terms for them. Okay, and the 1%, yeah, and these people, the egoic driving force is about power, control, yeah, money, all those kinds of things. This has been going on for years before COVID. There's been all these things. So I think there was a famous High Court judge, Lord Sumption, said, he was the Supreme Court judge, and he said, I understand power. And he said, the problem with power, it's totally and utterly intoxicating. And he likened it to a heroin addict. So the heroin addict, who would normally, without heroin, be his grandmother's favorite grandson, but when he's on heroin, he'll mug her, or and beat her up to get his heroin fix. Yeah. So people aren't themselves. So when you're in your ego, you're not yourself. So there's that category of and I'm being a bit generalized here, okay, to get it across. So there are other people. There's another group of people who want certainty because they're fearful. Okay. And some people would argue that the 1% are playing on that, manipulating them through fear. So they're fearful. So fear is, again, like anger and depression. They're all symptoms of being in your ego. So these people want certainty. They want to be led. Okay. And so they once you've got we want the grown-ups to be in charge. We want someone to tell us what we need to do, particularly if they think there's something with a lot of uncertainty going on. Okay, so they're equally in their ego. Then you've got this third category of people who I call the freedom fighters, and they're equally in their egos. Okay, and I've certainly. And by the way, I haven't been in the first category, but I've certainly been in the other two at various times. Okay, and so I'm not. I own this. I'm part of it. But it's having the awareness. So the third group, the freedom fighters, are they don't like the 1% for a start. They're their number one kind of people that they're against. Okay, and then they kind of have a bit of conflict with the other people, saying, why can't you wake up? Can't you see these guys are trying to control you, and all that stuff? Yeah. And so these three groups, what they've all got in common is we're right and you're wrong. Ego, judgment. Okay, we're right, you're wrong. Whether you're a freedom fighter, whether you're one of the, I think the freedom fighters call this second group, they call them the sheep, don't they? And most people call the other group, the elite, the 1%. Yeah. So these kind of, and again, I'm generalizing just to kind of convey what's been happening through a lot of COVID. And so what we have what's called egoic insanity in all three groups, because you get into your ego once it's about we're right and you're wrong. Okay, it leads to conflict. So if we look through human history, that's what's happened. So we can take, there's so many historical examples. A good one would be, say, the Russian Tsars. So they were, taking advantage of the Russian peasants and taking all their food and all the rest of it. So the communists, Stalin and his buddies, came along and overthrew the Tsars and chopped their heads off. we're right, they're wrong. Okay. And they came along selling an ideology. These are utopian ideologies that are one-sided, where they say, if you support us, there'll be more benefits than drawbacks. Yeah. Which is, as we know, this utopia is bullshit. You know, the world is a balance of challenge and support. It's a balance of positive and negative.
Yeah.
And that's where the ego lives. Transcendence is about transcending all positives and negatives. Okay. So you experience peace, which has no opposite. You experience joy, which has no opposite, because you're transcending duality. This is getting quite deep into some of the work that I do with people. So whichever area you're in, whichever one of these three generic, you know, and I, you know, bear with me if I am being a bit stereotypical, but it's the only way to convey it. So these groups of people, I come across them all, okay, and I've encountered all three groups, and the first thing to know is they're not themselves, because otherwise I'm going to get angry because I'm going to start judging them. Whichever group they're in, I'm going to get angry with them. I'm in my ego. Okay, so that's not transcendence. Okay, so when you can realize that whichever group you're having an issue with right now, and I'm sure people will be able to associate with particularly one of those groups that they have resentment for. Now that's not to say that I agree with some points that each of those groups make. I'll agree with certain points, and you know, you know, there are things that are just obvious that are happening. You know, like censorship and things like that are definitely happening. You don't even have to be, you know. So, but that if I get emotionally charged about that, about the people who are doing the censorship, I can say, look, censorship's happening, and this is my position on it. But as soon as I start getting into my ego, yeah, so I can have a certain point of view, but as soon as I get pulled into my ego, I'm not in my spiritual being. I'm not in my spiritual center. And so for me, one of the purposes of life, I have a there's a call. So essentially I have a program what I work through a lot of people with, and the whole purpose of the program is transcendence, to transcend duality, to not be stuck in judgment, fear, resentment, anxiety. And all three of those groups, there's a lot of that going on. And I get phone calls from people, whichever group they're in, and they're judging other people. They're angry with this person, angry with that person, and they're fearful quite often. And you don't need to be in that place. It's about when you transcend. So when you get in the present moment, when you're fully present in the present, that's the only place you have any power is right now. So I do a lot of breathing with a lot of my clients. So you simply relax and you breathe in. You hold it. Breathe out. Breathe in. Hold it. And you breathe out. And when you do that, you're you become aware of the thinking mind. The ego lives in the thinking mind. So the ego is actually not an enemy. It's a feedback system. It's telling you you're out of whack. It's telling you that you're either attached, you're judging, or you're resisting. It's telling you that that's what's going on. And so when you listen to it and you breathe and you get in the present moment, you transcend it. And when you're breathing, what happens is your thinking mind may still, or your ego may still be activated. You allow the thinking mind to melt. And at some point, it will quieten. And when it does, you're connected to your higher self. There's lots of different words that are used for this. you're connected to a field of intelligence beyond the physical, the one that I referred to that I experienced when I was 6. So constantly reattaching, so living in the egoic world of the thinking mind where the ego hangs out, and dancing with the ego. So the ego will get triggered throughout the day. My ego gets triggered, and I get told things, and then you'll have people. Sometimes it's triggered by somebody who's being self-righteous. Yeah. So I get angry with them for being self-righteous. So it's ego on ego. Yeah. The most interesting one that I come across a lot, I've experienced it personally, and people who will associate with this one, is where, say for example, something keeps making you angry, or something keeps making you sad, and then you beat yourself up for being angry or sad. So it's the ego beating the ego up.
I laugh, Alister, because I see that going on. Yesterday morning, I went out and I knew my wife was going to have breakfast with my son, and they have eggs, and I'm vegan, so I don't eat eggs. So I go out and I get my breakfast, and there's a cafe that does the vegan breakfast, vegan sausages. So I went and got that for myself, and then when I came home, she said, "Oh, you didn't think about me then, did you?" And I felt guilty for not asking her, and then she said, "Oh, don't feel bad," but I felt bad, and because I felt bad, I didn't finish my breakfast. And it was a self-fulfilling, like you just said, it was ego and ego, and at the end of the day, it was quite ridiculous, because I said, look, next time I go, I'll just remember you. That's all that needed to happen. There was the other drama wasn't really necessary, but like you said, it was ego on ego on ego, going through the motions.
Exactly. So there's so many everyday situations. So yesterday morning, my wife's rushing around because we've got some people coming over. She's rushing around getting the house ready. She goes into my youngest son's bedroom to draw his curtains, and he's got a load of teddies on the floor, and she doesn't know that his iPad has been left there. So she treads on the iPad, brand new iPad, and smash the screens explodes, and we only bought it for him for his birthday a few weeks ago. It's brand new. Okay.
No.
And so my wife's beside herself, my son's crying. So what happens is, because I practice this work, you can apply it in any situation. I've just finished my office is at the end of my garden. So I've gone to the house to get a cup of tea or something, and I've heard all this disturbance. My son's crying and my wife's upset because she's trodden on it and all this. And my eldest is not helping, because he's telling my youngest how many weeks' pocket money it's going to cost him. So you've got all this. So I've walked into this cacophony of drama. And what did I do? I tell you what I did. I did this. That's what I did. And it reminded me of who I really am. No longer was it a problem. It was just a situation.
Yeah.
It was just a situation. So I said, let's have a look. My wife put that thing in my hand and it looked really bad. And I said, okay, well, let's see. And it was bent. The actual frame of it was bent. And I just said, well, we'll work something out. Worst thing, we'll have to buy a new one, but we might be able to get it fixed. And my eldest was crying. I said, look, he said, Joseph tells me it's going to cost me 3 years pocket money. I said, look, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll see if I can get it fixed, and you can just pay me a small amount of what it cost me, yeah? Like 10% or something. He said, oh, really? I said, yeah. I said, we'll get it fixed. I'll find out. Anyway, so I just, I'm quite, I like fixing things anyway. So I went into my office and I looked at it, and I thought, well, it is a bit bent. So but it was still working. So I pushed the frame and got it exactly straight. I got a metal ruler and I got it straight. And then I took it up to this this computer place that I knew in town. And the guy looked at it and said, yeah, I can fix that. And actually, I got a phone call literally just before I'm speaking with you from the guy at the shop saying he's fixed it. And I think it's cost £80. Yeah. And my youngest has just got to pay £8 out of his pocket money. And he's really happy with that, you know. So he's learned his lesson and it's all cool. Yeah. There's no need for people to be in their egos. People could have, you see, if I hadn't done that, I think the ego me would have shouted at my son, what are you doing leaving your thing on the floor? Maybe I'd have had to go at my wife for not looking where she was treading. I don't know. But so you would have had all these egoic pain bodies prodding and pushing each other. Okay? So the reason, if you know anyone listening to this call, I call it the 1 minute meditation. It just needs to be a moment where the more you practice it. I practice it every day. I read a book many years ago by a guy called Thich Nhat Hanh. He's a Buddhist monk, and the one thing I learned from him, it's a concept called the bell. And the bell is, you know, in most ancient rituals and religions, they have, you know, the bell signifies, or a gong signifies a moment to reflect, doesn't it? It's actually a moment of connection, and you don't actually need a bell. It's what Thich Nhat Hanh says. He says if you're stuck in a queue, listen to the bell. If you're waking up for the day, listen to the bell. If you're going to bed for the day, listen to the bell. If you're kind of, you know, I mean, you could do it on the phone or traffic lights. There's just so many situations. You're transitioning between two appointments. I did it before I got connected with you. I did my breathing. And so this is the most, you can go to 20 years worth of personal development programs. Okay. But if you just do this one thing, I believe it will do more for you.
Yeah, I can see.
And it's really simple.
Correct me if I've misunderstood, but from what I'm gathering, so I have this belief that you can react to a situation or you can respond. Yeah. And your bell allows you to respond, because a reaction is not in your control. It's just a knee jerk.
Yeah.
Whereas if you respond, how you dealt with your situation with the iPad was a response rather than a reaction. What you said, if you were just going to be a dad and get angry, that's a reaction. And I think it's very good to have, amazing, in fact, to have a distinction between the two, because from what I've heard today, the idea of the bell is keeping you in check to respond to life instead of.
It's exactly what it is. Exactly what it is, Dizzy. It's and the applications are just vast. So one of the things, when you become more aware, so for me, when I work with people, it's about building your awareness, and that's the journey I'm on. And so I become more familiar with my own body. So if you think about some of the symptoms of ego, which we've talked about, fear, anger, sadness, and all the other things that are combinations of those, like guilt and shame, on the negative side, and then on the positive side, the infatuation, the wow, look how good I am, kind of, you know, where you build yourself up. So both those are symptoms, whichever, you know, those two polarities are symptoms of ego. So when you sense that you're in them, more difficult to pick up on the accentuated ones, where you're putting yourself on a pedestal. They're more difficult to spot. But when you practice this, you become aware of, in your body, you feel it. You will feel, most people know what I'm talking about. If you think about when you feel really, say when you've been broken-hearted about something, maybe you've lost a pet or someone you love, or, you know, whatever, and you feel this kind of heavy feeling. Different people, it's different place. For me, it's kind of towards the back of the base of the throat where I get it most, when I get that sensation. So you start to become aware of, and that it's different forms of anxiety. Anger, I get it more towards the front of the solar plexus, where I feel it if I'm angry, and I feel it around my face as well. So you start to become aware of your body when you're in your ego. Basically, it manifests in physical symptoms, if you like. You feel it, and so when that's the belt. As soon as you become aware, I'm in my ego, you breathe. And the more you can become aware on a daily basis, I'm in my ego here. If I'm being judgmental, it doesn't matter. A politician on television and all your friends are with you and they're saying, well, that person's talking absolute rubbish, or that's a blatant lie. So you've got all the support you need. Everyone's agreeing with you. Yeah, he's lying. As soon as I can say, I can observe the fact that he's obviously lying without ego, or I can get on my high horse and start slamming the table, say, he's a liar, how dare he? Yeah. And now the thing is with ego, it's very subtle, because a lot of people, their association with the word ego is, I don't know, a guy who's big and loud and drives a big car, and and he's like always full of himself. That's the kind of, but ego, that's just one slither. Okay, there are many dimensions of ego. So if I'm in a restaurant, okay, and I order a salad, and it gets served to me, and it's got a caterpillar in it. Okay, now there is a number of different egoic responses to that. One is the big loud one. How dare you? You've served me a salad with my, and you get really self-righteous, and you put the waiter down and you say, I pay good money for this. How dare you can really feel people in their ego there. But there's plenty of other forms of So for example, it could be somebody who just crosses their arms and looks at it, says, I know that the universe doesn't love me. Put a caterpillar in my salad. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've seen, it's like that. Or God, they put a caterpillar in my salad. I can't believe it. You wait till I get home. I'm going to give them a terrible review. I'm going to make sure that they shut down for business because they get so many bad, See, these are people who are not necessarily loud, who aren't saying things. So when you think about, if you're in that scenario, you see the caterpillar, you breathe, you connect to who you truly are, and you'll probably say to the waiter, I'm very, excuse me, but I noticed there's a caterpillar there. I said, would you like to, find out in the kitchen what's going on and sort it out? But you don't say it with any anger. You don't say it with any angst. And you'll probably get a much better response anyway than if you cross your arms and grumble or get all loud and start throwing, cutlery around. And that's everyday life, Dizzy. That's obviously when I'm working, a lot of people I work with in the business dynamic, you get this ego coming up constantly. And when you can be a business leader, what's magical is the better the more aware you are of you being in your own ego and other people being in theirs, and staying in your centered greatness, you just become so much better at dealing with stuff. You can deal with incredible conflicts and come out of it with much more empowering outcomes.
Wonderful. Look, there's so much value that you've delivered today, Alister. One thing I want to share is I'm going to share a quick video of the organization that we work with, World Transformation, and the difference that the work we're doing, and just spreading this awareness is a gift to humanity. So I want to just share with the audience and yourself about the great work that we are doing with. So press this. There we go.
This is a personal appeal to all our friends and family around the world. In April 2018, we launched World Transformation Academy right in the heart of the slum in New Delhi in India. On a regular basis, we have both the slum children and their parents being transformed with sessions of life coaching, yoga, and meditation. Regularly, up until now, we have between 500 to 600 people attending these sessions every month. The cost is approximately about £1,000 a month. Our vision is to expand this to all slums around the world.
So we've been able to do this work with the help of our generous sponsors. But what we'd like to do now is to continue and expand the work that we're doing, is to open the opportunity out to more people to get involved. So if this is something that you would like to get involved in, please connect with the World Transformation Organization, or you can make a donation, whether it's a monthly payment or a one-off payment, using our Just Giving link.
Did you know over 65 million people live in slums all over India, and 6 million of them are children? There are more rapes and suicides in slums than anywhere else in India. We want to impact these figures with your partnership. So we really need your help right now. This is a personal appeal to all of those that love making a difference. We urge you to generously contribute to our cause through the Just Giving link, and watch the 6-minute video that follows this, just to get a real feel of the difference that your money will make. This is an amazing cause. We look forward to your partnership.
I live in Kalkaji slum area, and I want to be an IPS officer. I want to stop the crimes and rapes for girls and these things. I want to change my sister's life.
17% of women experienced some form of physical violence in the past year. Individual factors related to the husband, like poor socio-economic status, consumption of alcohol, extramarital relationships. Reported cases vary from domestic violence to brutal rapes, mental harassment to sexual violence. Many more cases go unreported. A woman is raped every 20 minutes in India, National Crime Records Bureau.
I'd like to narrate a small incident that one of our volunteers narrated to me. She said that there was this young lady who had come over for her 3 introductory sessions of meditation. And on the 3rd day, when she had a one-on-one session with a trainer, she broke down completely, and she said that, last night I wanted to commit suicide because my husband is a gambler, he doesn't work, and whatever money that I get home, he takes it all and spends it all in gambling, and there's no use of my life. My life has been a struggle, and her mother-in-law was so scared and petrified that she sat beside her throughout the night, scared that she would take that extreme step. And in the morning she got up, she got dressed, and she came for her meditation session.
About 800,000 people commit suicide worldwide every year. Of these, 135,000, 17%, are residents of India, a nation with 17.5% of the world's population. Almost 6 million children live in the slums of India and has the highest rate of child sex ratio. 8.9% of the total victims of rape were girls under 14 years of age, while 16.1% were teenage girls 14 to 18 years. Over 65 million people live in the slums of India. Slum dwellers usually earn $1,900 a year. Young slum girls on their way to defecate in the open fields are abducted, raped, and at times hung from a tree, as in the case of the murder of 2 minor Dalit girls in Badon village near Delhi. Since the launch of its personal development school in the New Delhi slum, World Transformation Organization, through its regular life coaching, meditation, yoga, and motivational training, has started to transform the lives of slum children and their parents. For the first time in their lives, the slum community is being taught how to create dreams and goals, and have started their journey to realize them.
Brilliant, wonderful, Dizzy. Yeah, that's a great. I've already scanned it. It's it's a brilliant cause and close to my heart. Obviously, I'm half Indian, so it's
Well,
fabulous.
you know, what you've shared with us today, Alister, is amazing, because it doesn't matter where you are in the world, whether you're in a slum or in a palace, that bell's going to work for everybody. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, thank you, Dizzy.
Because I mean, I wasn't, every show that I do, I don't know what to expect, but I know I expected everything to get better, because look, the only thing you can do is share information that can inspire people. And you know, for me, this COVID period, I'm going to call it Saint COVID, because it's blessed me, and I think if you allow it to bless yourself, you know, I've been an advocate of personal development ever since I realized it was a career or a subject, and I didn't realize that was something to do. You know, when you're at school, that's not an avenue that's ever been exposed. I became a hairdresser. Luckily, the gentleman who trained me to be a hairdresser, he said one thing to me. He said, there's two types of hairdressers: ones that want to cut your hair and ones that want your money. Which one do you want to be? And I said, I want to be the guy who cuts the hair. And he goes, good answer, because the one who cuts the hair gets the money anyway. If you're chasing just the money, as a hairdresser, all you're doing is you're doing what the client wants. And the client necessarily doesn't know how to explain what they want in the manner that you will understand. So the best way of giving somebody the best haircut is to ask really good questions. Okay, the more questions you ask, the more you understand what they want, the higher probability you have of them coming back and them being happy. And you know, as I've grown up and I look back at that, it's the same with life, right? If you look at what really makes you happy and you do that, and I think that the COVID period has allowed people to do that, because we all got given one thing. And I often say to my friends, what's the one thing you need to improve everything in life? Time. Without time, and that's always everyone's excuse. Oh, I'd love to do this when I've got the time. Right now, I haven't got time because I've got my kids, I've got to work, I've got to do all these things.
The thing is, they're not being the only. For me, when we're focused on time, we're in our ego, because we're projecting into the past or the future. The reason the breathing's so important is it brings you into the present moment, because that's the only place you have any power. It's the only place you can experience true joy is in the present moment. And so when we put our focus on, well, when I've done this, if I've done that, then everything, and when I've done this, and this, then everything will be okay, and then I can relax and enjoy myself. You know, it's that kind of mentality, which is pure ego. It's appreciating right now in this moment, like in the moment I'm currently speaking with you, feeling that force of presence. And of course, the more present you are with yourself and with others, the more you live life to the full.
So if I'm somebody who hasn't found their purpose in life, how are we going to find it?
Well, you see, this is an interesting thing, because the word purpose, I deal with purpose a lot with an individual level and a business level. The thing I say to people is, before you go and figure out the traditional thing that people call a purpose, say to yourself, what is the transcendental purpose of my existence? Get that nailed out first. Get a sense of what that is. You don't even have to have words for it. It can just be a feeling. But you know, things I've been doing this for 17 years with hundreds of different people. I map out their personal purpose and then we work on the business later. But the words that come up for transcendental purpose is unconditional love, to experience unconditional love, to be the most authentic version of myself, to love and be loved. These are things that you can experience no matter what your circumstances, whether you're in an Indian slum, and I've been to an Indian slum before, or whether you're in a Beverly Hills mansion owned by a billionaire, and I've also been there before. Okay, so no matter what your situation and backdrop in life, you can be in the present moment. You can be in a transcendental state. That's the primary purpose. It's not to even No, being a father is a great mission. It's not a purpose. It's a no. It can be aligned with my life purpose. Being an entrepreneur is, yeah, it's a mission, of one of the missions of my life, helping people grow business. They're all missions, they're identities. Now, yes, I want them to be aligned with my transcendental purpose. I want to be authentic. That's part of my transcendental purpose. So years ago, I'll share this story with you. I was so I worked with Tony Robbins' organization many years ago, and I used to train their trainers in NLP, and I met some people through that organization. And I was asked to, so I met this lady. I was friends with her husband, and she asked me to. I was in LA, and she said, "Can you come and see me at my house?" So I'm in a Beverly Hills mansion. Okay. Now, the interesting thing is she'd seen a few different coaches and she'd seen some psychotherapists, and she was depressed. And that's what she told me. And I won't give any clues as to who she is, but she said to me, look, I'm depressed. So I said, well, what's going? Every angle had been covered. She'd seen some of the top coaches in the world. She'd seen psychotherapists. And I said, I thought I connected with my higher self, and I just asked her, this question just came out. Well, what's your purpose? She said, well, I haven't got one. I said, well, that's a lie. I said, everyone's got one. By the way, this wasn't me speaking. This was my higher self coming through me. And so I wasn't doing it. I wasn't being judgmental. It's just those are the words coming out of my mouth. I had no idea where they were coming from. And I said to her, no, you've got a purpose. Everyone has a purpose. I said, you might not have articulated it, but in your subconscious, there is a purpose. Let's find out what it is. And we dove it. We took a dive, and what we found out is from when she was a very young girl, two things. She was brilliant at athletics, and she loved playing with dolls. Those were her two things: being an athlete and being a mother. And in her purpose, I call it the purpose vessel, what she had put at an unconscious level was the purpose of my life is to be a professional athlete and then to become a mother. So then we look at what her life circumstances were. She'd recently retired from athletics. She had a very wealthy husband. They wanted to have children. And she found out from the doctor that because of the way what she put her body through as an athlete, that had impacted her ability to get pregnant. And so they'd been trying for children for nearly 2 years to get her pregnant, and she couldn't get pregnant. And I said, well, there you go. So if the purpose of your life was to be a professional athlete and then to be a mother, and now you can't achieve the purpose of your life, guess what? You're going to be depressed.
Yeah, you are.
And it was a big moment for her and for me. And we sort of sat there and just had tears. And I said, okay, let's rework this. I said, and this is where we got into transcendental purposes. Now, the interesting thing at the time, this was many years ago, I was reading a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, a book that changed my life. I'm big on books, and this was the most important book I ever read, because it's about a man who was plucked away by the Nazis from his middle-class home in Austria, where he practiced psychotherapy and philosophy, and he had a lovely, comfortable lifestyle, and they put him in a concentration camp. The average life expectancy in a concentration camp in Nazi Germany was a few days. And that's if you were lucky enough to be chosen as one of the helpers, not one of the people who went straight to the chamber. So, you might live a few weeks if you were one of the helpers. Anyway, he lived for nearly 4.5 years it was. It wasn't Auschwitz, it was one of the neighboring camps. And he ended up being rescued by the Russian soldiers at the end of the war, all emaciated. But all the way through, he had this sense of purpose. And one of them was appreciation. If you look on one of the editions of the book, it has this beautiful bird perched on this barbed wire with a very grey background. And he found one of his transcendental purposes. He didn't give it that term, but it was obvious. He was always finding things to be grateful for. Even in this concentration camp where the most horrific things were happening, he was finding things to be grateful for. So I had this conversation with this lady that kind of linked to that, and said, what could you, a definition of a transcendental purpose is no matter what your situation, no matter what your circumstance, whether you're a billionaire in Beverly Hills, whether you're a quadriplegic in a hospital or in a concentration camp, whatever your situation, what is it that you can consistently be in all of those scenarios? You can be connected to your higher self. You can be in a state of grace. You can, those are things, that's what your purpose is. Okay. All the other stuff is secondary. The other stuff's cool, and I work with the other stuff, but it's really important to get it clear that that's not the primary stuff. It's the secondary stuff. Getting clear on the primary purpose. Okay. So that way I know no matter what happens to me, I can live fearlessly, because whatever, you know, people are worried about totalitarian states and all kinds of things at the moment. Okay, if it happens, it happens. I'm not going to live in fear of it, because one of the steps I go through with a lot of my clients is in embodying your own death, embracing your own death, your own inevitable death. Because I do martial arts, I ended up studying the samurai, and I've discovered, not through lots of untraditional ways, that they were the most fulfilled people, incredibly fulfilled. And I also studied the Stoics, who go back to, you know, ancient Greece and Rome. And what I found is they also were incredibly fulfilled people. And they weren't people who generally went around preaching to other people about this is how you should live your life. They just quietly went about their business and lived in a certain way. And one of the things both the Stoics and the samurai did is every single day they would visualize and imagine their own death, their own passing over. Because when you think about it, that makes a lot of sense. Because what we do right now, the reason so many people are scared of dying, you know, and I pulled up in my car the other day, and there was a guy in the car next to me, and he had 2 masks, a visor on, and he was in a car by himself. Okay. Now, I couldn't help but smile, you know. and you know, but that's the level of fear people are in. And you know, and when you choose not to live in fear, you don't need to live in that state, because every day I imagine myself passing over. Every day. And people say, well, I couldn't bear the death of my loved ones. Well, their death is also inevitable. And it sounds very stoic to say, well, you know, well, I don't want them to die. I don't want to die. I don't particularly want to die. I don't. But I don't want to fear my death. And I want to embrace the fact that it is inevitable. In a la-la land that ignores my death. And the thing is, when I do that, I live life to the full. I'm more appreciative. So one of the purposes of my life on a practical level is to do that, to embrace my own inevitable physical death, my physical death. Yeah. And the more you embrace that, and then your ego kind of gets used to, you know, you build this relationship with your ego. Your ego just, there's a great book called The Surrender Experiment by a guy called Michael Singer. And he said, it's not about giving up. It's about the ego surrendering and allowing the spirit to come through. That's what it's about. So that's, you know, for me, that's the purpose. When we talk about purpose, we start there. Okay. Then we can look at these secondary purposes, these other things. They sit underneath it and they can change. You know, like with the lady who retired from athletics, that was just that's fine, because as long as you have your transit now, and of course her life changed after that. It was a very momentous intervention, and 3 years later I got a call from her, and she's now a mother.
Oh, wonderful!
So
amazing.
She let go of it. She let go of her attachment to being a mother. And the thing is, this is another thing I teach, is it's a paradox. When you can fully focus on something without any attachment, it's inevitable. Yeah. And when it's authentic, you manifest it every time. I've got people doing some unbelievable stuff at the moment, manifesting things you couldn't imagine, because it's authentic. because they're focused on it, but they're not attached, and it happens.
Yeah. Well, I think, Alister, you've delivered some very simple but very effective information. The last week's show was amazing. Like this week's show is amazing. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, because I wasn't expecting what I expected. Well, I didn't have much of an expect. I knew this was going to be exciting. I knew it was going to be I didn't know which direction it would go. I knew it was going to be in the direction of action and inspiration. And Alister, you've definitely done that today, 100%, man. I love it.
Thanks. Well, Dizzy, thank you for facilitating it. And it's very easy when, when you have someone who's as inspiring as yourself and working with an inspiring cause. I find it very easy to, when we're authentic, we're at our most magnificent. Einstein for me was one of the most spiritual people I've ever read about, and people think he's a scientist. Yes, he was a scientist, but he was an incredibly spiritual man, and he never got carried away with all the adulation that people gave him, because he was vilified for many years. I'm sure if the term conspiracy theory existed when he would have been called one back then. He was vilified for about 3 or 4 years, wasn't he, when he published the theory of relativity? Yeah. But his whole thing was he wasn't attached to what people thought of him. Wasn't bothered. And the one thing, my favorite quote from Einstein is, "Everyone is a genius." Okay, but if you teach a fish, teaching a fish to climb a tree, it will grow up thinking it's stupid. Okay, and that's the thing. And so when we're authentic, when we're absolutely authentic to who we are, that's where we have all our power.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science, really. So, for me, my kids, I don't want to force them into being a certain thing or being a certain way. I want them to be their authentic selves. That's all I want.
And it's true that children will reveal their authentic selves very early.
Yeah.
And, being a father myself now, it's made me look at children so much more. I in fact, didn't like kids before I had one. Oh, God's honest truth.
Even though you are a big kid yourself.
I am a big kid. My wife and family members say, "When are you going to grow up?" And I said, "I'm never growing up, man. There's no way I'm growing up. I love being a kid." Yeah. But you know what? Having a child has taught me so much. And I think, that children are our most important lessons, because they become what we think we are. And there are so many people I know that live through their kids, but the idea is they all have their own passions. My son's going to be 6, and I just allow him to be himself without any restriction. And I see the magic, and I think, wow, this guy's not scared of nothing, man. Yeah, and right. We're born fearless. And I think what you're saying, like you said, when you get out of ego and you're sitting in that transcendental state, which I love how your perspective on it being, that is your purpose. Because once you're in there, now you can see things differently. It's very, very difficult to plan things from a place where you can't see. So if you're watching this and you have a plan, we've got 2 minutes. I'm going to end the show at 1:11 and 11 seconds, just because those people who like numbers, we're going to start getting excited, aren't you? I mean, this show it goes out on the 5th. No, it goes out at 5:55. But just something that you said earlier today, just before, I did it for the first time last night, because like our life, my life is in a very amazing place. And I said to my wife last night, I said, look, if I go to bed tonight and don't wake up in the morning, how do you want the rest of life to look? And she was like, why are you saying that? I said, look, I'm going to go to bed now. It's earlier than I normally go to bed, but let's just say I don't wake up. How is life going to be? And that can be quite a pessimistic view. But I think it's just it always puts things into perspective. So we've got 60 seconds to go, Alister. Any last words?
Yeah, I think, when you fully embrace the inevitability of death, I'd say, is a key philosophy that can see you in a good place. And beyond that, on a practical level, is breathing. Constantly focusing on your breath, holding it, breathing out, and letting go of all thought, centering yourself, and then coming back and then allowing what you do to flow from who you are. That's the key for me. That's the way you live life like that. You won't go far wrong. Yes, you can have plans and all the rest of it. Of course you can. But constantly reminding yourself of who you really are.
Wonderful. Alister, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show again. It's great to connect again. We're at 111 and I'm going to drop it here. There we go. We've got 5, 6, 7,